Hello and welcome to this Expert Insights series where I invite each month an iOS engineer who is going to teach us something. For this first episode, I have Nuno Vieira, a senior iOS engineer from Stream. He will show us two tips you can use today to improve your code and prevent bugs. I hope you'll enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Nuno.
Hi, thank you. It was nice to be part of the show and the first episode. So it's really an honor to be here. And yeah, nice to meet you all. Yeah.
That's my pleasure. So, Nuno, before you show us what you are going to teach us today, I would like to ask you a few questions in order for my audience to know you more. So, the first questions I would like to ask is uh, where are you from, when you did start programming, and if you have any formal education in computer science?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm from Portugal. I currently live in Lisbon here in Portugal. I have a computer science degree, but I when I started that degree, I actually didn't really like programming. I always wanted to pursue video editing. I was really passionate about video editing and video effects,
Really?
especially when I was a child. But yeah, all my like in my time in school, I was learning physics and maths, and it kind of didn't make sense to go to a university to study digital arts or something like that. So I wanted yeah to go to a computer science degree because I knew that there was going to be jobs. So video was like going to be a plan B. Um, and yeah, it was in the beginning. I didn't really like programming, but after a while, I really enjoyed it, and I actually I never see myself doing anything else professionally. Now I see like the video editing and effects more like a hobby, and yeah, programming is right now my passion and what I really like to do. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. So, did you realize when you actually make that shift, like video editing was the first option for you, right? And how did you realize that you can be a professional developer in this computer field?
Yeah, so video here, especially in Portugal, would be a difficult career. So that's why I proceed to computer science to at least have a nice, like if video didn't work out, it would be the backup plan initially was programming or the computer science degree. And when it clicked me was like in the first year and 2 years of my computer science degree, I was really not enjoying because I was not fully understanding how to code and what to do with coding. And when I got a teacher that actually like really was able to make me learn programming and understanding programming and see how it can be useful, what I can build with software. That's when it clicked me that I could do this for the rest of my life with no problem because the creativity is unlimited. With video, like it's also kind of unlimited, but with programming is like you can learn all your life and build different things all your life. So that's why that's what it clicked me.
Yeah, and this is why I like programming, especially like the creative aspect of it. Like you can just sit here, have an idea, and develop that idea from A to Z to the release of your product and actually earn money from your product. And I think that it is pretty cool. And the human aspect of it, like you have your idea and you can change thousand or million of lives with just your idea. And I think that this is pretty cool. So now you are working at Stream. Can you briefly talk about your work over there?
Yes, so I mostly work on the chat product. So Stream, for the people who are not aware, we build high-level software components for other companies to use. So if you want a chat component in your application, you can use Stream. If you want a feed component as well, you can use Stream. And currently, I'm working on the chat SDK on the iOS SDK, which is open source. And yeah, most of like my day-to-day tasks is like fixing bugs, of course, building new features for that chat product, communicating with developers on the GitHub project, and also on Zendesk and Slack with other like more enterprise customers. I also write documentation, so it varies a lot. I also write RFCs, requests for comments, so that like if I want to improve something on the code base, I write those documents so that the team can review and then we can improve it. So yeah, my day-to-day basis in Stream is quite really varies, and it's really interesting every day. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Great. So now let's go to the example you are going to show us today, right?
Yeah.
The code you are going to teach us today. Let me just bring the screen, your screen on stage. All right. So what are you going to teach us today, Nuno?
Yeah. So first, my first example is to show you how can you leverage the compiler to help you write safer code. This is one of my favorite features in Swift, is how you can write really safe code, and like it's really helps you not write like error-prone code. And this is what I'm going to teach you guys today. Hope you enjoy.
Yeah, of course. Maybe
This is
just zoom a little bit for the audience.
okay. Okay.
Yes.
Is it fine now?
Yeah, it is fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, the first example, like it's something like most of us probably already wrote code like this. We have a function that we'll call a network service, whatever. You do a request, and then you need to call a completion handler.
Yeah.
Of course, if you are in the world of async await, good for you, but a lot of people are still using completion handlers.
Yeah, exactly.
And here, that's what, like, doing this type of code is really error prone. You have to call the completion handler in multiple places. And that right now, at first sight, this seems fine. But there's actually a problem here. So there's multiple branches in our code. If it has an error, we check if it's the timeout error. If it's timeout, we call a completion with the failure and the timeout error. If it's not a known, we call it with a known. And then we proceed to parsing the data to our coins model. We complete it with success. If the parsing fails, we fail with the parsing error. But now there's actually a problem here. The problem here is here. We forgot to call return here. So what happens is actually that this is going to be called twice, this completion. So if there's an error and the timeout is not a timeout, it goes to this branch. We call completion a failure. It still continues in the branch because we forgot to call return. This will fail because the data does not exist. So it will fail again with parsing error. So you can see how easy it is to make a mistake. And another mistake is actually forgetting to call a completion. If this code is way more complex, you might forget to call a completion, and the function will be waiting forever for this completion to get called. So this is how we can actually improve the code. We can leverage the compiler here and say, okay, after this function is executed, I need to initialize the result of this completion, and then call the completion block. And with these,
Okay.
this is quite nice because now for every branch that we do, we need to initialize the result property. And because the property is a let, so it's a constant, we can only initialize it once. So you cannot reset it. So if this was a variable,
Nice.
it would not work. It would not work. So it needs to be a let constant so that we are sure that we only set it once. And if we forget a return, it also won't compile because we cannot reassign it. So because it's a less constant, we cannot like forget this return statement or whatever and then set it again because it will not compile. And we also won't forget to call the completion. We will also won't forget to call the completion because it needs to be initialized at least once. So right now it's impossible to make mistakes with these codes. Every branch we set the result property. We don't forget to return, otherwise it will not compile as well. And everything works really fine. And now this is even much better because, like, imagine now there's a requirement and we got a conclusion. We concluded that this actually is going to be used in the UI, this response, and we want to make sure this completion is called always on the main thread. So now you can actually just do this. You can basically here on the defer statement, you can just wrap it the completion in an async call and a dispatch main async call. With the other code snippet, you can imagine how difficult that would be. You need to call dispatch main async for every completion, so it would be a nightmare. The defer statement is actually an optionality here for people who are not aware about the defer statement. Is when basically when this scope of this function finishes, the defer statement will be called. And this is useful to visualize what is the end result of the function. But of course, you could still call the completion at the end of the function. But yeah, it's a bonus tip in this example.
Yeah. I especially like the way you use differ here. I didn't see many code base using the differ statement. So using it here this way is really clever. Like it is the last thing that is going to be called when your function is about to when the scope of your function is about to go ahead. So yeah, this is really clever solution. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for this example, Nuno. For me, for instance, I've written dozen of times the first code example you just gave, and it was very error prone, definitely with the completion handler, the return, and so on. So using this solution might definitely improve that quality of code. So thank you for that. And today you don't have just one tip, but you actually have two, right?
Yeah.
And can you introduce us to the second tip you are going to show us today?
Yeah. The second tip is a more a common mistake that a lot of engineers do, and even senior engineers. I've seen a lot of people misunderstanding this. And they think that structs, because they are value types, they are thread safe. And it is, as long as you use structs, you won't have concurrency issues. And this is actually not true.
This is what I thought personally.
Yeah, but it's not really, because it is fine when you pass structs around threads, and that is fine. And that's why it is recommended that you use value types for your domain models in your application, because those data is going to be transferred between multiple threads around your code base. And in that case, it's safe because you're copying your value types, and if you change it in one thread, it won't impact the other thread. But the thing is that value types can also be assessed in by multiple threads. Like the most use case, the most clear use case is when using, for example, a singleton, but also just like a global value type of some sort. If you assess it by multiple threads, you're reading and writing, that's going to cause issues. Like actually in Objective-C, you could assign a property and say that it was atomic, and that would at least prevent crashes, but it wouldn't prevent data races. But here in Swift, you don't have that, and it can cause crashes and can cause problems. And yes, so I'm going to show you like a really simple example and a real example. It was a real issue on an old SDK from Stream. And yeah, let's see how this can be a problem.
Okay.
So yeah, here we have a really simple code. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Moya, but it's basically a third-party framework to handle network requests. And you can define plugin types so that you can change your request before they are executed by Moya. And here we had a really simple Moya plugin, which is basically to make the request on Moya with an authorization header. And here what we did, we had a token that we passed to this plugin, and then this function prepare, which will be responsible by Moya. It will be called by Moya. And here we set the token on the request. At first sight, this actually seems there's no problem here, but there is. We have a token here, and it's a value type. And we are reading it from this function. And why this is a problem is that this function, prepare function, is going to be called by Moya in a thread, a background thread that is handled by Moya. And in the code base, we actually changed the token property outside of this class, and we change it in a different thread from our SDK. And so what can happen is that it cannot be a concurrency issue because we can change the token and read it from different threads at the same time. And so this will cause actually a crash. And it's in a very, very rare case scenarios. So maybe if you have multiple users using your app, eventually it will crash, and it's going to be hard to debug actually. And hopefully you get a crash. It's good that you have a crash because otherwise you won't know you have a problem. Because if you have a data race only problem, it's going to be hard to know, and users users won't even report that. It's going to be easier, so to be harder. And so the solution here is there's multiple ways to fix this problem. But here today we are going to just use Grand Central Dispatch. And yeah, here is how you can fix the problem. So first, we create a serial queue, and we make the token private so that we can control that you cannot change the token outside of this class and in other threads. And then we create a serial queue to make sure that we only update the token and access the token in the same threads and serially, so that every execution is only done after the previous one finishes. So if you are changing the token here, it will only read it once the mutating of the token changed, and vice versa. So if you are reading, you can only write it after. And yeah, this is like there's multiple ways to make it thread safe. You can also look other ways online. This was just to make it really simple to show. And yeah, here we read the token and we manipulate the token. The reason is a sync is that when updating, you don't really care. You just want to set it and forget it. You want to do not block the execution of this function. And here it needs to be sync actually because the prepare function is synchronous. So it's not a completion block or not a sync await function. So you need to, you cannot use a sync, otherwise the execution would continue. So you need to wait to get the token, and then
before continue.
Exactly, and then continue the call. And so here you fix the problem. There's no concurrency issues right now with this code. And yeah, just wanted to I think this is a good tip as well, to make sure that people care more about concurrency issues, even with value types. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you very much for showing us this tip, because like you said, we tend to think that we are using just structs value type, so they are thread safe. But in your example, definitely we can have some data race issues, and those issues are really, really, really hard to debug, right? If your app crashes, you're going to have that log somewhere on Xcode or other pipelines you use to debug that issue. But for data races, your app is going to act really weirdly, but you're not going to see exactly there was a problem. So this is a really, really nice tip. And I think that for your solution, you use a dispatch queue, but for nowadays, I think that we can, since this class, since this is a reference type, we can definitely use an actor, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
this will definitely behave the same way like you use that dispatch queue. And
Exactly.
yeah, if you still talk about GCD, I think that we can also use a lock, right?
Yeah, you can use an NS lock that's a
NS
little
lock,
bit
yeah.
a little bit more low level. Grand Central Dispatch is more high level, but yeah, usually you'll be fine with the Grand Central Dispatch. But yeah, you can also use NES locks, and there's multiple types of NES locks, like NES recursive lock, but yeah, it is a nice topic to research if people are interested. But you can't go wrong with Grand Central Dispatch most of the time.
Definitely. All right. So thank you for these tips. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing and ask you some few questions, if you don't mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell us maybe one piece of advice you will have for beginner or intermediate developers willing to become more senior?
Yeah, I think the most important advice that I usually give is to try to write the simplest code possible. I think it's very common that especially mid-level engineers, they start to get quite good knowledge, a good technical knowledge, and they want to apply that knowledge no matter what. And my advice is to resist that temptation. And whenever you're trying to solve a problem, try to solve it as simple as possible. Even a complex problem, try to do it as simple as possible. Try to write code that a junior could understand. Of course, juniors might have some limitation on technical abilities still, but that's the goal. Is okay. I'm going to write this. I'm going to fix this problem. So that's like the most junior person possible could understand it. I think that's a good tip. And yeah,
I really love this advice, and I can relate. Like the code I currently write, like even a junior can read it. I try to write the simplest code possible, not try to go fancy, especially with Swift, where you have many language features. So using them all over the place can sometimes bug some people that are not familiar with the code base. So I really love this example. And yeah, before leaving you, some rapid fire questions. So do you prefer Git from the command line or from a GUI?
I actually use both. So yeah,
Okay.
I prefer usually command line, but I use also actually Git fork for more complex things, and it's a really great GUI. It was the only one that made me use GUI. So yeah, I like both. I use both.
Okay. Nice, nice. Do you prefer a desktop or a laptop?
A laptop, yeah, for
Laptop. Okay.
flexibility. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Standing or sitting desk?
A standing desk, although I still not have one, but I will have. But I would prefer to have a standing desk.
Nice, nice. So, do you mind people contacting you online? And if not, where they can do so?
Yeah, you can contact me on mostly Twitter. Is probably the best way to
Twitter?
contact me.
Okay.
And yeah,
Yeah. So, you already shared that your Twitter account handle.
yeah,
So, I'm definitely going to share
okay.
it with the audience. And yeah, I think that we come to an end. Do you have any final words?
No, yeah, it was. I think it was. Yeah, really nice to be part of this show, and especially the first episode. It was really
Yeah.
an honor. Yeah, it was great to be here, and I hope that this show has a great success and that people enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Nuno. It was my pleasure to have you as a first guest, and I do hope that you'll come again in the future. And yeah, this session was really insightful, as the name of this show. So thank you very much for that, for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.